My wife lied about the trip and ran away with another man. After 8 years she wanted to come back to me. I remember the morning she left like it was yesterday. The light coming through the kitchen window was soft and gold, and she stood there by the sink, brushing her hair into a ponytail like she always did when she was about to leave the house. Her suitcase was by the door, not too big, just enough for a weekend trip. She said she was going to visit her friend Ellie in Vermont. They hadn't seen each other in a while, she said, and needed some girl time. I smiled, kissed her cheek, told her to drive safe. She didn't even flinch. It wasn't the kind of goodbye that hinted at finality. There was no trembling voice, no extra long hug. She left like she always did, a quick kiss, keys jingling in her hand, and a wave over her shoulder. I didn't suspect a thing. The weekend passed slowly. I watched football, ordered takeout, even did the laundry she usually handled. On Sunday night, I sent her a text, "Miss you. When are you coming home?" No response. I assumed she was busy or asleep. But then Monday came. No word. By Tuesday, I called Ellie. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Ellie finally said, "She's not here, Dan." My heart dropped. What do you mean she's not there? She said she was spending the weekend with you. She didn't come here. I haven't spoken to her in months. That was the moment something inside me broke, not like a clean snap, more like the slow cracking of ice on a frozen lake, the kind you don't notice until it gives way beneath your feet. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she'd changed her mind last minute and forgotten to tell me. Maybe she was with someone else from her circle. I called everyone I could think of. No one had seen her. Her phone went straight to voicemail. The police told me she wasn't considered missing, not yet. She's an adult, they said. Give it time. But time didn't help. Days passed. Then weeks. 2 weeks after she left, I received an email from her. No subject line. Just a few lines of text. Don't look for me. I need to do this. I'm sorry. That was it. 8 years. That's how long we were together. 8 years of birthdays, anniversaries, quiet mornings, silly fights about dishes and laundry, all swept away by one nameless apology in an email. I was angry. But more than that, I was humiliated. My friends stopped asking questions after the first month. My mother avoided the topic entirely. Everyone assumed she'd left me for someone else, but no one dared say it aloud. I lived like a ghost for the next year. I stopped going out. I stopped calling people. I buried myself in work, took on extra shifts, started sleeping on the couch because the bed felt too big, too cold. Her side of the closet still smelled like her perfume. I couldn't bring myself to throw anything out. Grief has a funny way of rearranging your life without asking permission. Some days, I hated her. Other days, I missed her so much it felt like I couldn't breathe. I replayed every conversation, every look, every moment that might have been a sign. But I never saw it coming. And then, nothing. For 8 years, nothing. Until last week. I was walking out of the grocery store, balancing a bag of apples and a loaf of bread, when I saw her. Standing by the parking lot, looking straight at me. Time didn't move. I didn't move. She had the same brown hair, a little shorter now, and she wore that old green jacket I once bought her for Christmas. Her face had changed, not dramatically, just older, wiser. Tired. She took a step toward me and said my name. Dan. That was the first time I'd heard her voice in 8 years. I froze. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to run. And part of me, the traitorous, broken part, wanted to reach out and hold her, just to feel something familiar again. She looked down, then back at me. Can we talk? I didn't answer. But I didn't walk away either. We sat in the back corner of a small cafe across town, the kind of place we used to go to on lazy Sundays when life felt light and time seemed endless. The irony didn't escape me. Same tables. Same chipped mugs. Same background hum of people trying to drown their thoughts in caffeine. But we were different. We were strangers now, stitched together only by memories that neither of us dared to touch too quickly. She stirred her coffee slowly, watching the swirl of cream dissolve into brown. Her hands trembled just slightly, enough for me to notice, not enough for her to acknowledge. I didn't expect to see you here, I said. My voice came out quieter than I meant. I hadn't spoken that calmly to her in years, or ever, really, not since that email. I came back a few months ago, she said. I wasn't sure how to reach out. You found me quickly enough. She looked up. Her eyes hadn't changed, still that deep hazel with flecks of something unreadable. I've been walking by that store for weeks. Hoping. That word hit harder than it should have. What do you want, Kate? I asked. Not angrily. Just tired. Bone deep tired. She didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, watching cars pass, people pass, time pass, like she was looking for a way out again. Finally, she said, I want to explain. That's 8 years overdue. I know. Silence stretched between us. I wanted to leave. I wanted to hear every word. I wanted to yell, and I wanted to understand. I hated how much I still wanted to understand. She took a deep breath. It wasn't supposed to be like that. I laughed, bitter and sharp. What part? The lying? The disappearing? Or the email that could have been written by a spam bot? She winced. I was scared. And selfish. I deserved more than an empty inbox. I know, she whispered. I waited. If she was going to dig into the past, I wasn't going to help her. Not this time. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photo. It was a small print, grainy, a little faded. A man stood next to her in front of a beach sunset. His arm around her waist. She looked happy. I left with him, she said. I think you knew that. I guessed. He was someone I met at a conference 6 months before I left. We kept in touch. He made me feel seen. And I convinced myself I was trapped in our life. That I'd settled too young. That I missed something. And did you? She shook her head slowly. No. I missed everything I already had. I just didn't realize it until it was gone. I stared at the photo again. Her smile was wide, open. The kind I hadn't seen on her face in the last 2 years of our marriage. Maybe she really had been unhappy. Maybe I just hadn't noticed. Or maybe I had and ignored it. What happened to him? I asked. He died. 2 years ago. Car accident. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I stayed overseas for a while. Tried to build something new. I thought I could leave everything behind. But I couldn't. You were always there. In the back of my mind. I wanted to scream that it wasn't fair. That she didn't get to show up after nearly a decade and pour her pain into my cup as if I hadn't drunk enough of my own. But I also saw something real in her eyes, regret. Not just regret for leaving. Regret for everything. So now what? I asked. She shrugged. I don't know. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to look you in the eye and tell you the truth. And maybe she meant that. Maybe that really was all she came for. But something told me there was more. People don't come back just to confess. They come back because they want something they lost. She finished her coffee, pushed the mug aside. Do you hate me? That question lingered between us like smoke. I did, I said. For a long time. And now? I don't know. She nodded, stood up, pulled her coat around her. I'm staying with my sister for a few days. If you ever want to talk again. She left the rest unsaid, just like she did 8 years ago. I watched her walk away, her silhouette shrinking into the city crowd. And just like that, the past walked back into my life and didn't slam the door shut behind it. I didn't call her. For 3 days, I went about my life pretending that nothing had happened. I went to work. I walked my usual path home. I cooked the same dinner I always cooked when I didn't feel like thinking too much: pasta, canned sauce, garlic bread from the freezer. But everything felt off, like someone had rearranged the furniture in my head while I was asleep. I kept hearing her voice, not loud, not demanding, just quietly echoing, "Do you hate me?" Hate was easy. It had been my armor for years. It gave me structure when everything else fell apart. But after seeing her again, after hearing her story, that armor started to crack. And I didn't like that. On the 4th night, I walked past the cafe where we'd met. I didn't go in. I just stood across the street, watching people filter in and out. A couple sat at our old table in the corner, heads close together, hands intertwined. I stared until the light above them flickered. I didn't even realize I had her sister's address until I saw it scribbled on the back of a grocery receipt. I must have written it down when she said it. I told myself I wasn't going to use it. But there I was, 1 week later, standing outside a modest brownstone, heart pounding like I was back in high school. The door opened before I could knock. "I saw you from the window," Kate said. "Thought you might be lost." "I'm not sure I'm found either," I muttered. She stepped aside. I hesitated, then walked in. The place was neat, lived in. A small bookshelf lined with old novels, a painting of a lake on the wall, a vase of fresh flowers on the kitchen table. "I'm alone," she said. "My sister's working the night shift." We sat. No coffee this time. No distractions. Just us. "I keep thinking," I said, "that maybe you left because I didn't see you." "You saw me," she replied. "You just didn't hear me." That stunned, mostly because it was true. Somewhere along the way, I stopped listening. Not because I didn't care. But because I thought I already knew everything there was to know. "I thought we were okay," I said. "We were, functional," she answered. "But not alive." I looked at her. She looked thinner than before, like the years had worn her out from the inside. There were faint lines under her eyes, the kind that come from too many sleepless nights and too many buried regrets. "I didn't come back to fix things," she said quietly. "I know I can't. I just..." She paused. Took a breath. "I think I came back to forgive myself." That caught me off guard. I'd spent so long blaming her, punishing her in my mind, I hadn't considered that maybe she was doing the same to herself every day, every night, for 8 long years. "Forgiveness isn't something you can just ask for," I said. "I know. That's why I haven't." Another silence. This one deeper. Heavier. "I've been thinking a lot about our last year together," she continued. "You remember that trip to Maine? The cabin in the woods?" I nodded. It rained the whole time. But we stayed up all night playing cards. And drinking cheap wine. She smiled, genuinely. "I haven't laughed like that since." Neither had I. "I still have the photos from that weekend," she said. "Even when I left. I couldn't throw them away." "You shouldn't have." She looked up. "Do you think it would have been different if we talked more?" "I think we talked a lot. Just not about the right things. The truth is, we were good at routines. We were good at surviving. But we stopped growing. We stopped checking in. And when one of us got lost, the other didn't even notice." She stood and walked to a small drawer, pulled out a faded envelope, and handed it to me. "What's this?" "I wrote it a few months ago. I didn't think I'd see you again, so I wrote everything I was too afraid to say." I held it in my hands but didn't open it. "Not yet." "I should go," I said. "Okay. I don't know if I'll call." "That's okay too." She didn't hug me. She didn't cry. She just stood at the door, the same way she had 8 years ago, except this time, I was the one leaving. Back at home, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time before I opened the envelope. The letter inside was handwritten, 7 pages long. It started with, "I still remember the smell of your aftershave," and ended with, "Even if we never speak again, thank you for being my first home." I read it twice. Then I sat in the dark and wondered if a ghost could knock and whether I had just opened the door for one. Life didn't change overnight. Even after the letter, after her voice echoing again through the rooms of my mind, I still woke up alone. I still brushed my teeth with the same worn-down toothbrush, stared into the same mirror, walked the same hallways that had once held our laughter. But something had shifted. It was like her words in that letter had pried open a window I'd nailed shut long ago. The air felt different. Not better, just less stale. I found myself rereading her letter more times than I'd admit. She'd written about things I had forgotten, the time I surprised her with a roadside picnic on the way to her parents' house, the night we watched an old movie during a blackout and she fell asleep in my lap, the moment I said I love you without meaning to, and how she said it back like she'd been waiting to. Those memories weren't gone. I just buried them beneath years of resentment and silence. A week later, I saw her again. Not planned. I was walking through the park, headphones in, mind adrift, when I saw her sitting on a bench, feeding pigeons like an old woman with too many afternoons and not enough distractions. She looked up, smiled as if she'd known I'd come. "Is this what you do now?" I asked, half joking. She shrugged. "It's peaceful here. No questions." I sat beside her. We didn't talk for a while. Just sat. Watching the birds. Watching the trees sway like they knew something we didn't. I read the letter, I said. I figured. I didn't throw it away. That means something, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what it means yet. She didn't push. That was one thing she'd never done, even back then. She always waited for me to come to her. Maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe I needed someone who shouted. Or maybe I needed to learn how to listen better. Do you ever wish you hadn't left? I asked. She looked down. Every day. But you stayed away for 8 years. I thought I had burned the bridge too badly to come back. And now? I don't expect to cross it. I just wanted to see if it was still standing. The wind picked up, tugging at her hair. I resisted the urge to reach over and fix the loose strands the way I used to. I started seeing someone, I said, surprising even myself. She blinked. Now. A few months ago. She nodded slowly. Is it serious? It was getting there. I waited for her to flinch, to get defensive, to change the subject. She didn't. Good, she said. You deserve that. I studied her face, calm, steady, not pretending. There was something deeply unsettling about how gracefully she accepted it. Like she'd already mourned the loss of me long ago. I haven't told her about you, I admitted. That's okay. It doesn't feel okay. She looked at me, really looked. You don't owe me anything, Dan. That's the thing, I replied. I don't know if that's true. We parted without promises. Again. But the next day, I got a message from her. Just one line. There's a photo album in the attic. You should look at it. I didn't even realize she remembered where we kept it. That night, I pulled down the old ladder and climbed into the dust-filled crawl space I hadn't entered since she left. The air was heavy with insulation and old cardboard boxes. I found the album buried beneath Christmas lights and a cracked snow globe. Inside were photos from the entire span of our life together, birthdays, road trips, forgotten afternoons. There was one from our 3rd anniversary. We were dancing in the living room, barefoot, and my eyes were closed like I'd found the safest place on earth. I stared at that picture for a long time. The next morning, I called her. Can we meet? Of course. We went back to the same cafe. Our table was empty. Like it was waiting for us. I looked at the album, I said. And I don't know how to hate you and miss you at the same time. Her eyes softened. That's okay. You don't have to pick one. We sat there in silence again, but it wasn't awkward. It was full of things unsaid, of the weight of what we'd both lost, of the fragile thing we were now holding between us, not quite reconciliation, not quite friendship, but something real. I'm not asking for a second chance, she said. I just want to be part of your story again, even if it's a footnote. And if I don't know what I want? Then I'll wait. She said it so simply. No pressure. No tears. Just truth. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to stop hiding behind my anger and start figuring out what came next. 3 months passed. In that time, we met 5 more times. Always in public. Always neutral ground. Coffee shops. Park benches. A small diner near the river where the booths squeaked and the eggs tasted like memory. We talked about everything, not just the past, but the years in between. She told me about the man she ran away with. His name was Luca. He was older, divorced, a quiet man who wrote about architecture and had a tendency to hum when he was nervous. They lived together in Barcelona, near a small bookstore she loved. She worked part-time as a translator, learned how to make seafood paella, adopted a stray cat. She wasn't trying to impress me. If anything, her stories felt like confessions. Not of sin, of life. She had lived. I had endured. And we were both still standing. I told her about the women I dated and why none of them stayed. About the time I almost sold the house but couldn't sign the papers. About the way I'd started talking to myself, not out loud, but in thoughts that sounded like echoes of her voice. I never stopped thinking about you, she said once, quietly, as we watched boats drift by on the river. I wish I could say the same, I replied. But we both knew I was lying. Eventually, I introduced her to my girlfriend. It was awkward. Of course it was. But I owed her that. I didn't want her to live in the shadows of my guilt anymore. And surprisingly, they spoke like adults. Respectful. Careful. Honest. That night, my girlfriend asked me, "Do you still love her?" I didn't answer right away. "She was my home for a long time," I said finally. "I think a part of me always will. And now, I'm just trying to figure out what that means." It wasn't the answer she wanted. I knew that. But it was the truth. We didn't break up, but something shifted. As if she realized that she would always be competing with a memory. And maybe that wasn't fair to her. Or to me. A few weeks later, she moved out. No drama. Just a quiet goodbye. And then I was alone again. But not like before. Not empty. Kate and I started walking together on Sunday mornings. No labels. No expectations. Just footsteps in rhythm and stories swapped like postcards. We didn't kiss. We didn't hold hands. We didn't pretend we were the people we used to be. Because we weren't. One morning, she said, "I still wear the ring." I looked down at her hand. It was on a chain around her neck. I hadn't noticed it before. Why? To remind myself not to take love for granted. I nodded. I kept mine in a drawer. Thought about throwing it out a dozen times. Why didn't you? I guess I was waiting to know what it meant. And now, I think it means we survived. Not just the breakup. The pain. The silence. But ourselves, the people we were, the people we became. Somewhere along the way, I stopped needing answers. I stopped needing to name what we were. And that was the peace I never thought I'd find. She came to the house one afternoon. I had cleaned, not because I was expecting anything, but because I wanted to make space for her, or at least her presence. She stood in the doorway of what used to be our bedroom. Her hand brushed the frame like she was touching a ghost. "Do you ever wish we could start over?" she asked. I looked at her for a long time. "No," I said. "But I'm glad we found our way back to the same place." She smiled, not a hopeful smile, not a sad one. Just real. We made tea. Sat on the porch. The sun dipped behind the trees like it always did, as if nothing had changed. And maybe, in the quiet rhythm of two people who knew how much it hurt to lose everything, we had already started again, not as lovers, not as strangers, but as something else. Something lasting. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.